Okay, well, normally I like to put the most important stuff right at the beginning of the video, but this time, even better, I put it in the title, so you already know the most important thing. We are making our own original role-playing game. It was sort of inevitable. We've already started working on it. Fun, epic stuff is already happening. We've run several playtest combats with different groups of players, and it's already fun. We'll see how long that lasts. And we are actually live blogging the development on our Patreon, which I'm not sure anybody's ever done this before. Create an entirely new game from scratch and invite people to watch live as it happens. But I figured you folks should know about it before you get too far behind, and that is this video, so let's get started. This is a heroic fantasy RPG. Our goal is to make something tactical and cinematic, which I will explain later in this video. So not a gritty, dark fantasy game, not a survival horror game, not a hex-crawling exploration game. We like all those kinds of games. We just think they deserve their own design, right? It's crazy. And we're really not interested in making something that tries to do a little bit of everything and sort of fails to do anything well. Nope. Heroic fantasy, mostly fighting monsters with like 2 other gameplay pillars thrown in that we think are important. Right now, this is something we work on in our spare time. There's still a lot of work to do on Flea Mortals and Arcadia, but we make a little progress every week, and pretty soon, the Flea Mortals team will be done, and then it's full-time on the as-yet untitled inevitable MCDM RPG. We expect to have something to show for all of this later in the year, like just a simple short adventure like the Delian Tomb with some pre-generated characters so that you could at least download it and read it and even play it to decide if it is something you would like. At that point, we will go to crowdfunding and we will say, does this seem cool? Do you want the whole game? Click here. Between now and then, you're going to get a new series of videos called Designing the Game, where we talk about all the decisions we've made and why. This feels like a natural evolution of running the game to me. I think all DMs eventually become designers, even if they don't mean to. So you don't need to be in the Patreon to follow development. You just gotta wait for a new video. The Patreon is basically the live, warts and all version of the Designing the Game videos. But if you don't want to wait for those videos or the crowdfunding campaign, if you want to see how the actual sausage is made as it is being made, come on by the Patreon. But warning, we're not joking about this. This is basically unfiltered live development. Like sometimes we post our ideas before we've even tested them, it's weird for some folks because they might really like the idea. And then we say, no, we tested it and it didn't work, and folks get sad. Yep, it can be a roller coaster. But that is actual game dev. So be warned, do not sign up for this if you're not ready for some crazy ups and downs. The game's gonna come with its own world, or really worlds, Orden and the Timescape, which is to say, it's the same world as the Chain of Acheron and Dusk, and also sort of my novels. It's also the world you've been reading about in Flea Mortals, and all the fiction that we've written for our products. But Orden is designed to be a very specific and idiosyncratic instantiation of a generic fantasy world. So that means it is on purpose a world we built to be cool on its own, but everything we make for it is pretty easy to use in your world. I would say lore-wise, it's all as easy as Flea Mortals. This new game, whatever we end up naming it, it's going to be its own thing. It is not a fork or a clone of some other game. We are building something new from the ground up. We are looking forward, not backward. That means we are taking a huge risk because who knows if anybody cares about an original fantasy RPG from MCDM. I mean, I'm sure some people will care, but will enough people care to make this game a reality? We don't know. But the more work we do on the game, the more excited we get, the more it seems like we can do something really fun in the same space you're already playing. We want to capture that archetypal fantasy feel. If someone shows up to the table, even if they've never played a fantasy RPG before, they show up with certain expectations of what a fantasy game is about. Just being a gamer or a nerd, you have these ideas baked in. There's probably a thief/rogue character. They're probably highly mobile, high damage output, hard to hit, but very squishy. A glass cannon. Yeah, exactly. Or there's probably a knight or a paladin in heavy armor, hard to kill, not very mobile, right? Yeah, let's have some of that. We want to meet those expectations. But all the rest of this nonsense from the 70s, I don't think it makes the game better. What if we threw it all out and started from first principles? What kind of game would you get? Well, we're going to find out together. We've been working on 5th edition stuff for 5 years now, and that system is very... No, it is too much to explain. Let me sum up.
Let me explain. No, there is too much. Let me sum up.
5th edition has strengths and flaws, but the problem we have is it is primarily designed to protect their brand, to recognizably look and feel like that game from the 70s, the game my generation played in the 80s. And we do not feel that that is the best way to make a game. So, having made DLC for this game for years, we feel like now is the right time to show you what we can do if we're not shackled to this 50-year-old game. For a lot of people, I'm worried there's going to be this feeling of divided loyalty, right? Oh, Uncle Matt is making a new game, but I love D&D. Well, I love D&D too. I love the hobby, the culture, I love playing, dungeon mastering, I love the history of it. None of that has changed, and you're going to get more videos about classic D&D settings and some insane old school adventures, and more running the game whenever I have a new idea for it. So I love the culture of D&D, but the rules, these rules, I do not love them. I don't know if you noticed, but running the game has never really had anything to do with 5th edition, right? I mean, how could it? I started that series only a little while after 5th edition came out. But the value of these videos was the decades I spent behind the screen running the game across it's got to be at least 5 editions by now. And my favorite adventures, which by now are some of your favorite adventures, I've run them in almost every edition of the game. And I think you'll be able to run those same adventures using our game. It'll just be more fun, more dramatic, less weird, because we are free to make the best game we know how. We don't have to start by inheriting a bunch of very weird design from 1979. So that's why we're doing it. There's been an enormous amount of drama online, which we sort of had a front row seat for. I ended up on the front page of YouTube in a Legal Eagle video. I hope most of you know nothing about that stuff because it is all really tedious and a little depressing. All that drama absolutely informed our decision, but really all it did was take something that we'd been noodling on here and there over the past year, with this vague notion that we might go to crowdfunding with it this year. And it just made it all very clear to us that, yeah, this is what we should be doing. Let's rip off the Band-Aid. Speaking of ripping off the Band-Aid, we are still full-time on Flea Mortals and Arcadia. Those are both going super well. People love our monster book. But back in January, we flew James and Hannah out for a week of in-person brainstorming and prototyping on this new game, which a week is not a lot of time, but we learned a lot. We got far enough that now we have weekly playtests of this new game. I mean, it's 5% of the finished product, but it is already playable because we focused on rapid prototyping, actually playing encounters at the table. Because if we can't nail that, nothing else matters. And it worked. The game is already fun. We've killed a lot of goblins, and only one PC, I think, he got better. And it was dramatic as hell. It just needs a lot more work. So there's already a lot to talk about. It's all covered on the Patreon. I can't cover it all here. Otherwise, this video would be 10 hours long. But I want to give you a preview of how we do things and how we think armor is going to work in our game. It's actually pretty straightforward. Sometimes it's Hannah, sometimes it's James, but in this case, I sat down with a blank document and I just asked myself the question on the page, what is armor about? What assumptions do people bring to the table when it comes to armor? Anyone who's played any fantasy game or even just, seen movies or read books has a shared expectation that armor it's going to do something, right? It's not purely decorative. And as I wrote, I identified a really simple principle. We expect that armor protects us somehow, but also limits us somehow, right? We expect a rogue to be lightly armored, highly mobile, but pretty squishy. Whereas a paladin or a knight or whatever, a heavily armored fighter is more protected, but somehow much less mobile because they've got this bulky armor on. And I just said, all right, so armor reduces incoming damage, which I think is how you would expect armor would work if you just thought about it for 10 seconds, but it also reduces damage proportionally to how much it limits your movement. So plate armor might reduce incoming damage by 3 points, but it reduces your movement by 3 spaces. That's it. That's how armor works. And suddenly it seemed like we knew how magic armor might work. It could reduce more damage or limit movement less. I think MCDM dwarves are silico-organic. They're half stone. So maybe that ancestry just has the equivalent of built-in plate. Easy. And of course, we can adjust movement speed so heavily armored people can still get around, like, 5 or 6 squares of movement, but lightly armored or unarmored characters can move around a lot, like maybe 8 squares. Now, this was exciting because we had already talked about movement being way more important in our game. Specifically, knocking enemies around and getting knocked around, getting thrown into walls, getting thrown through doors that break and splinter when you crash into them. Not like Superman punched you. It's not a superhero game, more like a modern action movie or a modern fantasy movie where all the characters get beat up and thrown around a lot. We like that. It is cinematic and tactical, and that is exactly the space we want to be in. It's cinematic because you can picture it in your mind, and it's dramatic, and it plays the way movies look, right? This is going to be an RPG in 70 millimeter. I feel like Omar Sharif is going to appear behind me in the desert. But it's also tactical because now positioning matters a lot more. Yeah, we love that. Heroic fantasy genre, cinematic and tactical gameplay. And suddenly, things got very interesting because classically a tank is just somebody with high AC and a lot of hit points. That's cool, we like that, and you can do that in our game. But now we also have another way to be a tank, which is you are hard to move. Sure, your heavy armor slows you down, but it also makes it harder to move you. You're sticky. And some characters, like the tactician, once people get into melee with you, it's hard for them to get away without consequence. So now there's a few different ways to be tanky, and that felt very exciting. And we've tried this, and it works. We don't have all the movement abilities tuned in, but that basic premise that armor reduces incoming damage but limits movement allows for different characters to use different armor without any one choice being obviously the best. Now, is that how armor is going to work in this game? I have no idea. It sounds good, it's working, but we have a long way to go before we have a finished product, and it seems very likely to me that our current ideas about armor just aren't complex enough to support every classic archetype we can imagine. That is the process. We believe in this and it seems to be working, but we have no idea if it will survive into the final product. But if it doesn't, you will know why, because we're documenting this whole thing for you. I sort of think this might be close to the final design on armor because I don't think the fantasy we're all imagining is about lots of different armor options. Weapons? Yeah, weapons need to be more robust, but I think armor can be simpler. We'll see. But at the end of the day, if it turns out that we need a more robust system, we will come up with one. We are going to test the shit out of this, and we're going to keep testing it until it's fun. So it doesn't really matter what we think or what we say. What matters is how does it play? I felt pretty good about that design after I showed it to the team, and everyone said, yeah, let's try that. So having written that doc, it wasn't very long. It's like a single page, I think. I just took that design doc and I put it on the Patreon. You can go read it right now. Link in the doobly-doo, a real actual game design doc. We already got lots of posts like that. So if that sounds cool, either that actual rule or just seeing how we do things, come on by the Patreon. The water is great. We got cake and tequila. Some of you may have noticed all of the sturm and drang online about licenses, which I hope you find as tedious as I do. So I'm not going to try to sum it all up. We want to make it as easy as possible for people to use and make content for our game. Period. I originally wrote a whole long thing here about our plans for opening this game so that folks can do literally whatever they want with it. And I believe very strongly in that. But I also think, who cares what we plan to do? What matters is what we actually do. So until we have something to put into a license, I will just say, we want everybody to be able to make and use stuff using our game and in our setting. We believe that the community of players is also a community of creators. You got players, dungeon masters, you got DMs who make their own content, and some of those DMs share it online. Some of those people sell it. Some of those people build a reputation for being good designers, and they start getting freelance gigs, and eventually they're full-time designers. So it's not like toothbrushes where this company makes them and these people buy them and that is the end of the transaction. No, it is a spectrum. And any line that you draw trying to say these people own the thing and these people buy and use the thing is artificial. But companies that rely on investment need to find a way to monetize their players. Monetize you. We don't have investors, so no loot crates in MCDM products. We just want to make great games and empower you to create your own stuff. So now you know how we think. When we've got some content to put into a license, then you'll see what we mean. I think you'll be surprised. Until then, you're going to have a lot of questions. I can tell you, running the game isn't going anywhere. Anytime I have a new lesson, you will get a new video. We've still got several 5e products in the pike, including sometime this year, the talent. Your patience will be rewarded. Information on our new game is going to be pretty thin on the ground for a while. We make progress every week. It just happens between working on other higher priority stuff. Probably a lot of your questions are answered already on the Patreon, but me and James both stream regularly. You can come by his Twitch channel. He streams every Tuesday at 1 p.m. Pacific, or my channel. I stream every Tuesday and Friday evening Pacific time. Links below. We love talking about this stuff, so come on by and ask whatever questions are on your mind. That's it, folks. The video's pretty short considering how big an announcement this is, but I wanted to get to the point so that we can move on and make the game. You know, when I was a young person working in this space, I always thought, or I hoped, that someday I would work on what I used to call a big ego project. Some really personal RPG with written and designed by Matt Colville on it. But since then, I have worked on a couple of solo books, and it is awful. I hate it. I really do. What I think produces the best game is collaboration. I want to work with a team. And MCDM is one hell of a team. I think every product we make is better than the last. I think if you judge us based on Flea Mortals or the Beast Heart or Arcadia, then you know what kind of quality we're shooting for. I think we do more actual testing, actual play testing than any company in this business. We pay better than anyone else, way better in most cases. I mean, we pay better than Hasbro does. We treat the people who work with us with respect. We want folks to like working with us because we think that makes the best product. I also happen to think it is the right thing to do, but in point of fact, I don't know any other way to run this company. I have a very simple notion. You build a great team, you treat them well so they make great products. Great products will find an audience and they will pay us so that we can treat our people well, so that we can make more great products and so on. The more we double down on this, the better our products get. There was a version of this video that was much longer and more dramatic, and it focused more on the industry drama in the last couple of months. And I believe that video would have gotten a lot more heat than this one is going to. But having written that script and lived through that drama, we do not need that kind of attention. It would have been easy to turn this into an us versus them story, but I think that's a distraction. In this relationship, there is no us versus them. There's your table, your friends, and the stories you want to tell. We want to make games for that table, for you and your friends. That's it, folks. On behalf of the MCDM crew, thanks for watching. Next video, you find yourselves cut off from the world you know in a castle fraught with peril. Until next time, peace out.